Welcome to today's episode of the E.N.G Media Podcast. We have a very exciting guest, Andy with Quantum Night. For those of you just joining the podcast, I am Christian Gannon, the co-founder of E.N.G Media, and we specialize in helping software and tech companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your software tech business to the next level, make sure to stick around. So let's get right into it. I understand Quantum Night is making it incredibly easy and fast to protect your data, whether you're a business or a developer. Your technology locks down files in under a millisecond using super strong encryption that's even ready for future quantum threats. Users can use your desktop app or plug it right into their software with their SDK. It's powerful, simple, and built to keep your information safe now and in the future. Could you share a little bit more about your business, the services you offer, and your role within it?
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Great to meet you and great to be speaking with everybody out there in podcast land. But I'm Andy Schwadwer, co-founder and CEO of Quantum Night, and we offer a software-based solution which is sold directly to enterprises and through our website for small, medium-sized businesses. Healthcare is really our primary focus at this time, but really across all regulated industries is our within our initial scope. And we're really focused on, in the healthcare context, protecting patient data, devices, surgical robotics, supply chain, and other mission critical and life critical operations.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And to add on to that, how did the idea for Quantum Night come about, and what kind of gap in the market were you trying to solve when you built it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really what the catalyst was the breaches that are currently occurring, right? And within healthcare specifically, they're really being attacked in an exponentially more ready fashion, right? It's happening on a regular basis and in ways they weren't anticipating. And it's really breaking sort of the current cryptographic and identity management structures that are out there. And so really, what we're looking at is, how we can help healthcare providers who are being attacked, as well as meeting the new regulations and other urgent requirements that they need to implement in order to protect everything that's life critical across their operations.
Of course. And I've actually talked with a couple people in the healthcare space, and right now more than ever, it's so important to get that right, especially the encryption part and making sure that patient data isn't going outside of where it should be, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest attacks today are sort of these man-in-the-middle attacks or these ransomware attacks, right? And so
Mhm.
basically what hackers are doing is they're breaking into the network through wherever, right? It could be a sensor on the wall. It could be, from someone getting a AI deep faked and giving up their credentials. It could be for whatever reason, but they're there. And once they're past that certain level, there's no level of protection. And when you start looking at, medical devices and things like that, like you could even look at maybe a heart monitor or a pacemaker, for example. If a hacker was able to get into something like that or alter some of those things with slight changes, like millisecond changes, right, that could
Mhm.
cost lives. And
Of
that's
course.
that's real. And you could start to apply that even if you look at like robotic surgery, right? What if someone could get in between and alter what the surgeon's doing versus what's happening in the robotic part that's on you, right?
Right.
So these are all really important areas, and within healthcare, obviously being so life critical, there's such little room for error that that's our primary and our initial area of focus.
That's awesome. It's a really deep-rooted goal, I think, and it's awesome that that's driving the vision for Quantum Night. And from your perspective right now, what are some of the trends that you might be seeing in the security space, or maybe even specifically the data encryption space?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest sort of trends that we're seeing is a lot of new regulations coming out. And so within healthcare specifically, they just announced some new certifications related to all medical devices, for example, which we're anticipating the enforcement of that being announced starting in October of this year. And that puts basically every medical device manufacturer and folks in that game way behind the eight ball with gaining to compliance, right? And so
Hmm.
as they're playing catch up, unfortunately, they've let it go until usually they get hit with some sort of a major breach. And then that sort of gets them to think about what's going on instead of really doing the preventative measures now. And so that's where we're coming into play. Really, there's been so much limited new capabilities available in the market, and there really hasn't been anything out there that pushes the bar in any way that allows people to protect themselves greater than they were today. That's what we've done is we've integrated really encryption and identity management and made it as efficient as delivering it with two lines of code. And so literally that's also the performance hit. So now you can apply symmetric class cryptography with asymmetric features anywhere across your entire data ecosystem all the way down to a database, and in fact, controlling the access and the encryption all the way down to like the varchar or the character level within a column and
Hmm.
row within a database or within a document or within a picture. You can control that access and even encryption down to the pixel, right? Or in a
Wow.
frame, like in the context of this discussion, right? You could have
Hmm.
it be where it's flipping even every millisecond, right? And you could start to control now the granularity of what even that attack surface looks like. And so that's what we're doing, is really bringing that to the market, making something that's extremely complicated, and companies are looking at 7 years of developing something to hopefully get their arms around it, where they can actually button up immediately in a way that they've never been able to do before, and have more exponential power and control over their keys, and the direct control of their privacy, and security end to end.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing in the depth that you shared it at. And kind of in addition to that, in this landscape right now that you're talking about, where it may take 7 or 8 years now realizing this is what they need, what's kind of making it more challenging, or on the flip side, easier to operate in right now? Maybe it's adoption rates, or maybe something else that's kind of in this landscape.
Well, it's sort of both, right? Because you have the regulations that are pushing the bar, but then
Hmm.
the regulations, as they're pushing the bar, there isn't really a lot of options. So people are spending a lot of time on consulting and trying to do audits of what they currently have, when the reality is what's currently in place is end of life everywhere.
Hmm.
And no one's immune to it, whether you're a three-letter agencies in our government or whether it's you and me talking on this call right now. We're all vulnerable in the same ways. And so that's what's both speeding up and slowing things down, is people are becoming aware, and as the regulations come on board, it takes time for the regulations to come, but then once they hit, then that's sort of the forcing factor, right? And so a
Of
lot of
course.
those regulations are years behind right now, right? 3+ years, if not even 6 years behind from the original plan of attack. And there's no slowdown in quantum computing and AI development, and especially the weaponization of those capabilities that are literally going to exploit this old system that everybody has in just even more pervasive ways than what's occurring right now. And right now we're being lit up in an unprecedented way.
Of course, and I think that's happening across a myriad of spaces. I have some connections in the finance space that deal with quantum computing, and that's a huge thing right now. Is that if any of that data leaks, that could be the end of that company, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's so important right now, and I'm glad you mentioned that. And as we kind of specialize in marketing, we'd kind of like to know how Quantum Night's reaching out to new clients, and how are you kind of acquiring them now in this time?
Yeah, well, I'll say everything up to now, because we've been really, we've really developed this on our own, and really like managed the money and finances around it directly to keep control and really kind of put us in a
Hmm.
dominant position. And so really it's been focused on our existing networks. I mean, my team brings, each person brings like 30+ years of experience in domain expertise, either specific to industry or specific within specific technologies. And so really, that's allowed us to open up doors, but also put our solution in a place where we're driving compliance, right? We're already compliant, meaning that we, some of the standards that are emerging from NIST, who's the National Institute of Standards and Technology, that create all the standards and things, regulatory
Hmm.
frameworks that people have to comply with. They've been releasing some new ones, right? And so we have that. Um, but yeah, I mean, end of the day, it's about how can we help people, and in the lead gen side of things, through LinkedIn or whatever,
Right.
really just tying it to our network and adding high value landing points that people are feeling pain in right now. One great example of that is just identifying anybody in IT who has dealt with a breach recently, and you have any legacy equipment. You have to deal manually with all these certificates everywhere, right?
Hmm.
And with our solution, for example, we can mitigate, most, if not all, certificates across the whole infrastructure, right? So you don't have to do that ever again. And you have much more direct control and management over that without needing to physically touch them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And kind of shifting to maybe a little bit on the personal side, what does your typical day to day look like as a founder?
Yeah, that's a great question. So kind of wake up and scan to see what's happened overnight, as I'm sure most CISOs and those folks are doing every day also, because
Of
it's an
course.
uncontrollable madness. So you're just sort of waking up and seeing what happened and how you want to deal with it. And so that's what I focus on. And then I really try to convince people and show them that they don't need to be that reactive anymore. And in fact, if they had our stuff deployed already, they would have woke up and not even cared. And we've exemplified that a few times. So it's great because we can share stories that we've already implemented. For example, when like the AWS breach happened,
Hmm.
about 6, 7 months ago, and I think 250 million customer passwords were stolen or something like that. When we woke up, we didn't care, because all of our data across all of our AWS clusters and nodes everywhere is encrypted, even in between node to node communication or VM to VM types of things across the cloud. So you can start to deploy this anywhere, and it changes the bar and changes what your attack surface is and changes how you need to defend yourself. And so the other piece of that then is really crypto agility. So in addition to getting people on board with that, it's the idea that there's a lot of things that are changing, right? The crypto, every geography on the planet, every country, every state, every, soon probably every city, every municipality is going to have their own version of regulatory things around these things that you're going to need to play with. And so what crypto agility is really having one system that's already there, that when those things change, it's more plug and play. You just drop that in and you don't have to replace anything else across the spectrum. You're automatically able to be compliant with whatever standard that they throw you at. And that's really what we come into play. It's really about that plug and play, ease of use, 2 lines of code, and we bring, security and protection that's exponentially stronger and more performant than anything else on the planet.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And when you think about success today and maybe even the future, what metrics really matter to you and the Quantum Night team?
Well, I think it's really about our customers and our clients never having data breaches and ensuring that every single patient everywhere, that their data and anything that's life critical that's touching them is secured and operating as it should and not manipulated in some way in between in a disruptive or a malicious way.
Of course. And I think that's a very value-driven approach, right? Looking at metrics. I think a lot of the answers that I get all the time are like client retention rate or revenue growth over the year. And I think that is what you just answered is one of the most insightful because there's a lot of meaning behind it. It's not surface level, right? It means all of that stuff will come, but if we do what we want to do right the first time, then all of that will fall, right?
Well, and that's to your point, right? If you provide customers value, revenue and reorders and deeper relationships naturally occur. And so
Of course.
that's our model from the get-go.
And that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that as well. And looking ahead, what's next for Quantum Night in the next 6 to 12 months? Are there any big product features or launches on the roadmap?
Well, so we do have a variety of different things that are coming out. Really, we have a bunch of things that are really focused once again right back onto that area of patient protection, right? So the updates are all around once again easier ways and more protection around the different types of breaches and where people want to put it. And so it's directly correlated to that. And like you said, healthcare is the key for us right now, and really all around that patient data. So that's where it's all focused. So you'll see a lot of announcements around the healthcare area.
Of course. And everyone that's watching, if you're in that space, keep an eye out for some of those updates. I'm sure they're going to post it on their LinkedIn as well as their website too. But kind of going into my last question, hypothetically, if you had a magic wand and could solve just one problem within your business, what would that be?
I guess it'd be the tangible results of understanding exactly, how easy and preventable we make these breaches and what sort of operational impact that brings. Because the more we can tie that back to the business and show them exactly where their risk gets mitigated and where they reduce their risk, that's exactly what every CFO and boardroom wants to hear immediately, because right now it's the Wild West.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining. If people want to connect or learn more about what Quantum Night is doing, where could they go and how could they connect?
Well, so we have a bunch of information up on our blog with use cases and things like that. And we also have Quantum Night. You can download our technology for free at our website. And that's all at quantumnight.io. So that's QUAN as in Nancy, TUM as in Mary. And the night is KNIGHT.io. And you can find everything there.
Perfect. I will leave the links to the blog in the description along with the website. So if you want to check out Quantum Night and the incredible things that they're doing in this space, I highly recommend it. The website really broke it down for me pretty easily, and I'm not in quantum computing specifically, but it gave me a good understanding of what you do and how you help people. But other than that, thank you again, Andy, for your time and insights today, and we'll see you guys on the next podcast.